This next session came about because we talked about, we were joking about titles this year, and we said, let's bring sexy back to caregiving, you know? And then we realized, hey, it was never sexy to begin with, so we can't really use that title. But one of the things that we thought was interesting was that technology was actually lending into the cool factor for the younger people to communicate with their grandparents, with their parents, with their children, and that technology was actually adding the cool factor. So all of a sudden, it was a little bit more engaging. So hence how technology is increasing caregiving's cool factor. So. And the other thing to note is that this is not just for family caregivers, but we're talking about professional caregivers as well. So I want to introduce our moderator, Kaye. He is an award-winning journalist who's been covering technology longer than most of us can remember. So he knows what's cool. So you'll be well taken care of for this great session. Back to our mottos. He's the Chief Content Officer for In the Boombox, and his motto is, "In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." Take it away.
So can we get the lights up for a minute? Because I'd like to be able to see the audience if I could. So if you can all stay awake, you'll get a gourmet lunch when the session's over. I'm lying about the gourmet part. How many of you are caregivers, either for parents or children or relatives? Okay. The numbers are really staggering. According to some accounts, about 35% of Americans are involved in caregiving. Obviously, not all of them are primary caregiving, but that's a lot of people. It's like, turn to the right or left of you, and the chances are one of you guys is a caregiver. And for primary caregivers, the estimate is that it takes them about 70 hours a week. 70 hours a week? That's like 2 full-time jobs. As our senior population doubles in the course of the next 20 years, and so my big difference between last year and this year is now I are a senior. And our number of octogenarians quadruples in that same time period. And there are fewer resources to draw on, both in terms of warm bodies, in terms of money. One of the only ways that we are going to be able to cope with the strains on caregiving is through technology. We've got a great panel. I'm going to ask each of these guys to come up, introduce themselves, and tell a little bit about what they're doing. But the primary question for all of you is, what is your technology doing to help make caregiving easier and better for both the caregivers themselves and for the recipients? And the one thing I'll say to this audience is that whether or not you are a caregiver, sooner or later you will either be a caregiver or a care receiver, which means you should be thinking about how you want to be taken care of, what technologies are coming along that may be benefiting you, and start thinking about making those decisions before they are going to be made for you. So on that note, let me start with David Ennis from GreatCall, who has a good call.
Thank you. So I'm the CEO of GreatCall, and we've been working with serving older Americans and their caregivers for almost a decade now. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that focusing on technology for technology's sake for this market is something that will never work. Focusing on cool technology is really exciting, but it's never going to work. Because there's two things that have to actually happen to make a caregiver tool successful. One, it actually has to deliver the information back to the caregiver that they would want and will find useful. And secondly, there has to be some component that's adopted by the aging consumer either in their home or in their hand or on their body or whatever it has to be. And if we can't get those people to actually adopt and use that technology, then you've hit a dead end as well. So I mean, there's a lot of great products that have gone from the technology side first, like the shoes that can track changes in gait of the older American and predict stroke, and can monitor the older American. But who here's mom is going to wear a pair of shoes around the house all day long and all evening long so that you can track those things? Or more importantly, how many of your moms, thank you, how many of your moms have a closet full of shoes that you would have to try to replace and say, we're going to replace all these nice shoes with this one pair of ugly super shoes so that we can track you and we can predict whether you're going to have a stroke? It's just not going to happen. So I think there's so many cases where we let technology become the most important thing instead of really looking at what is important. So the first thing, we've done a lot of research into what the caregiver is looking for. First of all, they don't need to know that, in general, that the fridge was open, the toilet was flushed, and that the oven was turned on. I know there's technologies out there that can do that, but from our research, that's not necessary. What they want to know is that mom got up and maybe made it to their doctor's appointment and home safely that day. So some of the things that we found are there's three key things. One is the caregiver wants to feel more connected. They want to feel to their parent, and don't forget, a large number of caregivers are spouses. I think we often forget that as we're talking about caregivers. Second, they want to feel more capable as caregivers. It's a daunting task, and they need to be able to really feel, some relief that we're helping them and they're feeling and they're doing a good job. And lastly, they want to fulfill their parents' wish for independence. So everything you do for the caregiver has to meet one of those three things. But all of that is for naught if you can't get the actual older consumer to adopt some sort of technology themselves. And there's a whole bunch of limitations that come along with that when you try to get them to adopt technology. So you have a whole group of people, of interested caregivers and caregivers in the marketplace and their parents saying, yeah, this would be great to start working together on a technology. But then there's all these limitations. The first one is price, right? So if you're going to install sensors all over my house with Bluetooth connections and Wi-Fi and broadband requirements and everything else, it's going to require installation. It's going to require broadband requirements. There's still a lot of seniors out there who need these tools who don't have broadband or Wi-Fi. So you start to limit yourself based on price, the requirements to set it up, how difficult the setup is. Does this just ship and open out of the box? How easy is it to use? And the convenience. Convenience being, are you leveraging an existing device? Are you leveraging their existing cell phone? Or am I going to put a new piece of technology in their home that they're going to have to figure out how to use, that they're going to have to remember to go and plug in or check every once in a while or enter data into? So every single one of those things cuts down the number of people that will actually adopt the technology. And if you don't have the technology in the aging consumer's hands, the whole thing's not going to work. The caregiver tool can't communicate. So just briefly, what we're doing at GreatCall, if you're not familiar, we really focus on the real problems of the aging consumer. So things like loneliness, complicated medication regimens, fear of falling, fear of leaving the house. And then we've created a portfolio of solutions that operate on a platform so that you give a device like one of our smartphones or a Jitterbug flip phone or a 5-star device, you put it in the hands of your parents, and then they are covered with brain games, access to nurses and doctors, personal emergency response, and it's also their cell phone or their PERS device so that it's leveraging an existing tangible platform so that it's easy to adopt and convenient to use. What we just announced today, and what this really is about with caregivers, is an app for caregivers called GreatCall Link that links to all of our GreatCall devices. So basically what this app does is you link it to your parents' 5-star device or their Jitterbug phone or their Jitterbug Touch smartphone, and it will link through and provide alerts of whether your mom has hit her 5-star button. You can see what's happened if she's hit her 5-star button, whether the event was cleared. You can see motion and location. So mom left home, mom went to the doctors, mom got home safely. You can also have interaction. You can also do location specifically on a map if necessary, but we found that's not a priority for people. They'd rather just get alerts as to where mom is and that she's safe at home. So that is what we're doing right now in terms of caregiver technology, and I'll pass it to the next person so that we can stay on track. Thank you.
So,
Oh, yeah. Go
Kian,
ahead.
you guys are doing a solution that's based on a device that we all grew up with and we all live with, and we probably will all continue to live with. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that device is and why it's so important?
Who can guess what that device is, by the way? TV, great answer. So my name is Kian Saneii. I'm the founder and CEO of Independa. It's great to be with you today, and Happy New Year to everyone. As Gary just mentioned, we have an approach where we think, to David's point, the best way to be cool, the best way to be effective is to have the technology disappear. And when you think about that, particularly for the care recipient, how are you going to disappear when someone may be not really as apt to learn new things or interested, or possibly really addressing the #1 issue for the care recipient, which is what? Is it falls or medication compliance? It's actually loneliness and depression, self-neglect, and so forth. If you're alone, not necessarily with your spouse, but if you're alone, that could be a major issue. So if you're sitting in front of the TV, why not use that platform in a way that connects you and allows your caregivers to interact with you in a way that's very fulfilling, very meaningful, and literally is life-changing. So that's one of the cornerstones of our solution. But as I share with you what we do, it's probably helpful to give you a quick video. How would I click on that? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So let's just listen to this real quick, and it'll be helpful to see how we approach the market.
Somehow, despite the last 30 years of advancements, the main technology brand for the elderly is still, I've fallen and I can't get up. How could this be? This was the question that led to the founding of Independa. The situation at the time, which largely remains today, was disconnected point solutions addressing different aspects of care for the elderly, including social, health, activity, environmental, and, of course, safety concerns. These separate solutions create challenges for the care recipient and their family, as well as organizations in elder care. While many companies address a part of the overall solution, no one has been providing services in a holistic, integrated manner. Until now. That's where Independa excels. First, we integrate all these point solutions into one cloud-based system that is centrally managed, administered, and monitored with rules, thresholds, and reporting. Second, the technology is so advanced that it runs in the background. The elderly care recipient doesn't have to learn anything new, whether delivered through a TV or a tablet. The care recipient doesn't even have to plug in a computer. Either device offers video chats, a variety of reminders, photos of grandchildren, access to email, Facebook, and much, much more. And if using the TV, it all happens right on top of whatever is being watched already. This is the power of opening up the world to the elderly right in their residence. This is Independa, redefining independence and your business. Connect with us today at www.independa.com.
So that gives you a quick synopsis of how we approach the market. When we talk about a care recipient, it's always in the context of a partner. So even though we're talking about the care recipient as an elderly individual in their residence, but in reality, there's 4.5 million folks in senior living homes and communities. And how can you maybe come into their rooms when they may be alone using a device that they can use? But also, how do you remotely support their health and activity and environmental concerns? And to David's point, nobody would like to know if mom's opened up the fridge 5 times. But if you're in the home and you haven't opened up the fridge all day, then you do want to get a trigger to make sure that mom, even though she's forgotten to eat, you may want to have somebody call her or visit her, et cetera. So the fact that you can provide remote support using the TV and or a tablet, but integrate it into the cloud, in our opinion, is very important. Also, tying that into coolness, the biggest coolness compliment we can ever get is when somebody uses our product. Because in that demographic, if people are using it and engaging, you can't be patronizing, you can't be big brotherish. And when you do something that doesn't require change for that individual, and it really is life-changing, we're really excited about that. This slide really shows you all the different factors that go into independence. It's not just about cognition, it's not just about medical, it's not just about remote care, it's not just about social, but how do you tie it all together? And very briefly, this is our systems architecture, so there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into making this happen. And the caregiver there, by the way, David's solution, if there's time, which there isn't today, I always demo it because we integrate with a wonderful 5-star pendant from GreatCall, as you can see on the health sensors on that side. And his app today takes a big step forward in helping those caregivers. And to the point Gary made, those caregivers could be professionals and or individuals in our system. So if you want to visit our site, you can see more information on this. And tying this all into our broken healthcare system is really important when you think about how do you take the healthcare last mile to the residents, whether that's in the home or in a community, in a system that senior living communities, nursing homes, even hospitals could start looking at over time. And that's credit to LG Electronics, they're the world leaders in commercial TVs. They're our investor, our partner for many years. And what we've done is embedded our solution inside the TV, unlike any other on the planet, which means you're watching Matlock and you get a medication reminder. Or you are watching The Price is Right and your granddaughter pops up with a video chat request. And if the TV's turned off, we can actually turn it on. If you're not in the room, we can follow up with a phone call. So the whole system is surrounding you in a comfortable way, but not patronizing in your life. So I'll leave it at that, given my time, and we'll take questions, I'm sure, later.
David, how much did you pay him to plug the app?
It's private. Yeah.
Okay. John Souza is the CEO of MedHelp. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the caregivers, John?
So I'll just give you a quick, and I know we're short on time, so I'll keep this short, but we're the largest online health community. We get 14 million people a month coming to our site to discuss their health. Of that, about 30% are caregivers. And when you spend a lot of time with that, you learn a lot what people want about caregivers. So if I go through the site, we provide 4 different things. We provide communities where you can go and connect with people who have the same condition as you. You can connect with doctors, ask questions, get response from some of the top hospitals in the country like Harvard, Cleveland Clinic. You can get information, and then we have a full world of apps out there. And I have to say that what changed our relationship with caregivers was the iPad. As soon as we got the iPad, the usage with all of the seniors just grew exponentially. And one of it was easier to use, it was easy to expand the fonts, but we found out that what really changed is you could take your iPad to somebody else's house and tell them to fix it. It was hard to take it with your full computer. And that was transformative because people could say, look, here, fix this for me and get it to work. So that really changed the relationship. We work as well, we have a full platform that we work with all health plans, providers, and part of it works with seniors, and I'll just talk briefly about what we do there. So first is third-party integrations. It has to be seamless, and why does it matter to caregivers? Because when a senior goes and gets a test done, as a caregiver, you want an alert to show up, and you want to be able to pull all of the results right away. So we do that sort of integration. So if you have a senior that has a blood test, you'll get it as a caregiver form. It says the test was done, and you can pull it. It's really important. It has to be in the background. It has to be transparent. The second is device integration. Device integration, there are a lot of great devices out there. You want them to be, I call it passive participation. It needs to be a device with a very long battery life that you can give them, they can use, and you can see the data. So that's one. It's passive. They don't need to do a lot, and it works well. If they want to get involved and get engagement, we do app integration. And this is a great one where we allow people to take pictures of the food, and as a caregiver, you can see what they're taking pictures of. They take pictures of other things. What we've learned is to work around what the seniors do. Often in pictures of food, we'll get pictures of grandchildren and everything else. And that's fine. We figured out how the app should allow them to do that, take pictures of whatever they want and go through. But this is a great way, if you need to monitor their food and they're capable of engaging, provide them with a full series of apps that they can go through and work with. And last is provide you with this community and expert, not only for the senior, but for the person taking care. So if you have questions about it, there's a community of other caregivers that you can go through and participate with. You can put questions, get them answered by doctors so that you can understand things about the person you're taking care of. And I'll just end with 2 things. One thing we realized in working with this is, simplicity is very cool because there's nothing less cool than not being able to use what you have. It's a lesson we learned very quickly. And the other one is, if you really want to seem cool as a senior, is you want to have things that make the grandchildren say, wow. And I saw that with my dad explaining to my son about his Nike Fuel Band, and my son was so impressed with it, and he felt really cool doing that. Thank you.
John, thank you. You know, I've done panels before with folks who were sort of automatons, but this is the first time I've done a panel with a robot. Okay. So with that, let me introduce Noland Catter from Anybots and Dr. QB, who's going to talk a little bit about the whole issue that was kicked around here all morning, and we'll spend a little bit more time on, which is social isolation. You've heard it before. The more I look into this, the more it becomes clear that social isolation for the elderly is more of a factor than medical condition or almost anything else in their ongoing well-being. So, Noland?
Thank you, Gary. I'm actually honored to be your first person to integrate a robot into a panel. It's an honor. So Anybots was founded by a technologist named Trevor Blackwell in 2001. And he was able to, it was primarily a robotics research company, and he was able to leverage that research and transition into a product company by introducing QB, which is a robot that we're sharing the stage with today. And I guess it's like the elephant in the room. Everyone can see it. And over the course of the past few years, it's received a tremendous amount of attention from various media outlets, including many, I'm sure many of you have read in publications like Wall Street Journal and Popular Science. But for those of you that have not, QB is a two-wheeled self-balancing robot, which can be controlled anywhere in the world through a web browser. So, excuse me, I lost my voice 3 days ago, and it's just come back today. I'm pretty happy about that. So the benefit of the two-wheeled self-balancing is that we're able to utilize a gyroscope and accelerometer to keep it upright, balanced, and operating at eye level. So in effect, what that does is it reduces the weight, and it makes it safe in crowds of people. But it also allows it to traverse over multiple types of terrain. The other aspect is how it's controlled. And it's, I guess to highlight how it's controlled, for instance, if somebody wanted to be here today and for some reason or other they couldn't, say that they may be in San Francisco or Vienna, Austria, or Lyon, France, or Odense, Denmark. It doesn't matter where they are. They could actually be here. Since it's the 21st century, why not have a robot avatar? And so long as they have a web browser, and we have QB connected to either 4G or Wi-Fi, in a nanosecond, and literally a blink of an eye later, they can instantly be immersed in our environment, moving around and interacting with the people in this environment, and experiencing the forefront of a new class of communication, which is called mobile telepresence. And some may call it virtual telepresence, which essentially is just adding mobility to video conferencing. So anytime that you can see a benefit in having mobility in a remote environment, this type of technology is ideal. But some people might say, why not a Skype session? And the reason is because with a Skype session, you have to be dependent on someone on the other end to answer that call. And what we have, it's not only remotely controlled, but it's remotely activated. So you're not dependent on someone to answer that session, and you're not relegated to stay in one particular place. You're very free to roam around, which could be, I think, a very big benefit in caregiving, in that you can keep an eye on anybody or someone whenever you would need to, and have the freedom to roam around. But that freedom can mean a lot of different things to different people. For instance, it could be a commuter that wants to escape the mental drudgery of sitting in traffic. It could be a person that wants to avoid a 17-plus hour flight, to keep an eye on quality control for various manufacturing plants. And it could be a family member that wants to attend an important event, like a wedding or a birthday party or a bar mitzvah, and now they could. Or it could be a child that may be in a hospital and wants to live a more fully integrated lifestyle, and now they can. And to showcase that example, I'd like to show my weekend, please.
On Sunday, I got to play with my friends. I guess I did do a lot this week. It was fun to see my friends and family. My doctor said that I wouldn't be able to leave my room, but then they got me a new robot called Anybots. It can go anywhere and be me. It's so cool. I can't wait to go to school and tell my teacher what I did.
So isn't that awesome? It has to be one of my favorite types of uses for this type of technology. And in that case, that was Grady Hoffman, who was a 9-year-old going through bone marrow treatment and was able to use the robot to be able to stay connected to the outside world while he's going through an isolated medical treatment. And the story is not only compelling to me, but it validates the positive impact that our robots can have on helping society, which I hope can solidify the start of something great, which would be the inculcation of virtual presence into caregiving. So QB, I see, is a starting point on where we need to improve the technology so we can benefit more applications in life situations. Because really, I don't think telepresence alone is going to be enough for us to gain traction in this market. For the true value add, we're going to have more functionality than just mobile telepresence. And to do so, we actually are going to start opening up our platform and our technology, so that way we can attract the leaders and the technology companies that are taking caregiving into the next level and to the future. So being here today amongst all these thought leaders, it's maybe an opportunity can present itself, and we can find a way to integrate the robot into your applications. And it's evident to us what the opportunity can be if we incorporate something more than just telepresence.
Right. Noland, thank you. I have two questions. How much is Dr. QB?
So Dr. QB is, since this was introduced in 2009, the technology was pretty expensive at that time to build. And its retail is around $10,000. But as time continues and, probably get to Moore's Law of technology, the prices will come down.
All right. I saw pictures of him wearing a bow tie. If he goes to a bar mitzvah, does he wear a yarmulke?
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
So there are a tremendous number of issues that face caregivers on a daily basis. The security of the environment for the care recipient, the personal safety, falls is a huge issue, as all of you know. In dealing with the healthcare system, very often you have multiple people involved in the caregiving process, and you need to exchange data, and there's a lot of time and effort that goes into keeping everybody up to speed with medical tests, with who's going to drive mom to which appointment, coordination, etc. So let me start off, David, with you and what you are doing beyond sort of the push-button stuff that we've seen to help integrate the life of a caregiver with all of the other elements that are part and parcel of that.
Yeah, well, I think the first component to actually making any of that happen is establishing that link between them. So the first stage is actually having to have something in the hands or the home of the older consumer that you can link to in a simple, easy way so you feel connected. And then once that link is established, the amount of information that you can get back and forth between that link is unlimited. So right now we're doing mostly location and motion and things like knowing that they got to their doctor's appointment, they got back from their doctor's appointment. But you can see that the next thing would be able to take in readings of weight or blood pressure or other piece of information that would then go back to that app as well. And then you could have that as a part of a core ecosystem where doctors can have access to that same information because it's all cloud-based. So anyone can actually integrate and start creating more of a comprehensive database of what's actually happening with the older consumer that needs help.
All right. Kian, one of the things that I know several of you guys were at the MedHelp Summit out in DC a few weeks ago, And one of the things that was discussed there, which I think is a major issue, and I raised it a little bit earlier, is the notion of siloed data. All right. Everybody's got a system that generates some piece of data. But what we've got in the final analysis right now is sort of a Tower of Babel. Where do you see this whole process of integration so that the sensors from Lively, the stuff that David's doing, the stuff that you're doing, can all be integrated for the caregiver and his family?
So that's a great question, and it's really foundational to the DNA of Independa. When we launched the company, literally, we asked IDEO, the design firm, why hasn't there been a better brand? Why hasn't there been something different for the elderly? And the two reasons they mentioned was lack of integration, so everyone ends up doing, and they're important things, but then second one is simplicity, which we've all talked about. So how do you integrate is critical, and also there's layers of integration. So in our case, we're a software company, so we're built on integration. The platform that we have, we don't have a single hardware component. We work on Samsung tablets, they support us globally. We work on LG TVs, they're a strategic investor, and that's a global SKU. But we don't sell those devices, and we're a channel company. So the channel takes that into the residence and integrates with that, and the examples of the healthcare device is another good one. If you don't integrate with multiple choices, then you end up really having one option. So we're very adamant about that at some level, people want to be able to choose. Today, there's a great pendant and best of class, and David's probably coming up with a brooch, a beautiful brooch maybe in 2 years, that does the same thing. But it's hard to know that and predict that. And our view is that you really want to be a software-only company to provide that integration.
I think one of the problems that you're seeing, though, is that between insurance companies and pharmacies, everyone is doing their own solutions. So instead of medication adherence is the no-brainer one, where you'd say, why wouldn't all of the insurance companies got together and said, let's create a recommended medication adherence app or something? But instead, each one has gone to create their own medication adherence app. So now, and then each pharmacy has their own medication reminder system, and they won't open to any of the general apps out there. So if you have a medication adherence program and you want to plug into CVS Pharmacy, it's not going to happen. So now you've got basically every insurance company has a recommended insurance medication program that they've created because they want to promote it as part of their thing. Every pharmacy has theirs. And so I don't see, until we actually start realizing that those things shouldn't be differentiators for their service, they should be actually service providers who are going to help people and start creating generalized programs. I think that's going to be the key.
All right. John, one of the things that makes me a little nuts is that the last I heard, there are roughly 50,000 health and wellness and fitness apps out on the market. 50,000. I mean, that's just staggering. How does anybody find out what's going to work and what isn't?
So, I think search has changed the way we do a lot of things. When you look at how much information is out there on the web, Google does a great job of finding very quickly what you need. And what's interesting with apps is it's become the same thing. It doesn't matter if there are 2 billion apps out there. Give me 20 seconds and I'll probably tell you which are the top 3 apps for any category, because they do a great job of going through and sort of filtering through them. I think the tough part with having so many apps, if you have a new app, it's very hard to get discovered. And I think that's the challenge moves now. Discovery I can solve, but for all the people starting companies saying, I'm going to have a new app out there, well, it's going to get lost very quickly. So I think you really have to spend time in trying to figure out how do you go through and get yourself visible. Now, what I like with this full app universe is that if you get adoption, there's a great positive. So we have never spent $1 actually getting me to download our apps. We have over 7 million downloads. And we get a new 1 million downloads right now every 2 months. So, and we don't spend any money, but you need to be able to find out a way to get people to use it, and the people who use it, make sure they give you the positive feedback. If you do, you can rise above the noise.
I have to jump in here because I'm passionate about this as well, is Haptique was...
They're in trouble.
And it's really annoying because people are jumping on saying, oh yeah, they're in trouble, they pulled back, they didn't. But what they were doing was the right thing, because it's not a matter of finding apps out there, it's a matter of finding apps that are safe and secure and private in healthcare. I mean, there's this flashlight app out there that has been selling people's location data secretly for millions and millions of users who did this free download. That's baloney, and you tell me there's probably a bunch of health apps out there that are doing the same thing, and somebody's got to step up and actually start giving the recommendations as to which ones are safe, private, by reputable companies.
Do you folks know, let me see a show of hands. Do you know who Haptique is or what Haptique is? Okay. Haptique is a company that was founded essentially under the auspices, I guess, of the Greater New York Hospitals Association. And they took on the job of becoming sort of the good housekeeping or underwriter's lab for health-related apps. And they had cleared, what, about 18 apps, and then found a security hole, not with themselves, but with
one of the apps that they recommended,
right.
Somebody found that there was a hole in it, so they hadn't done the testing proper. But it was easy to fix. They just got to figure out how to improve their testing.
And so basically what they've done is they've pretty much pulled back and said, you know what, we're not going to keep doing this until we figure it out. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. They are the only ones out there I'm aware of who've really been turning around to the consumer and say, we can't, you guys don't have the bandwidth to test or prove every one of these things. We'll do it for you. On the hardware side, you've got the Continua Healthcare Alliance that's doing stuff. You've got some of the stuff.
Well, you've got the FDA on the hardware
Well,
side.
you've got the FDA as well, but in terms of standards.
Yeah.
You've got Continue, you've got some of the stuff that Qualcomm has done to initiate the way that you gather and collect data. But we're still a long, long way from getting to the point where a caregiver can be comfortable with the notion that any one thing they pick is going to A, maintain privacy, 2, be safe, and 3, be shareable.
Yeah.
I actually don't think this, so I don't think it'll ever happen. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you why. When you use your phone, you assume it's private, but we just found out that somebody might be listening to every one of your calls. So with the NSA listening to your call, it's like, I think the problem with this is that it changes too quickly, and the people are not skilled enough to find all the holes in every app. Google Play, when I put an app out there, it goes live in a second. iTunes takes 2 weeks before, and they do their mumbo jumbo behind the scenes to try and get out. It's killing them. And so I don't think we need to find a way to get it qualified, but you can't put it as a gate before things get out, because things move too quickly for. I think.
So
let me
just one comment on that, if I
okay.
could. We're comparing apples and oranges. There's integration in the residence around the care recipient, which we think is really critical, and having care recipient facing technologies and caregiver facing technologies. Then there's this whole other black box voodoo land of the medical system that needs to tie in. And those folks do not want to be integrated, to David's point. There is no incentive. The $1 trillion of waste that we talk about in our healthcare is $1 trillion of somebody's profit. So when Epic in a hospital doesn't release information to caregivers, for instance, because it's not part of the hospital system and a competitor shouldn't see it. So I think, to everyone's point, I think there's 2 integration points. If you integrate around the person, you change the game. Then that data ends up going back into the system versus the other way around.
Let me ask you guys, how many of you think that privacy is dead and we should just get over it and go on collecting information? Okay. How many of you think that we really need to be concerned about privacy in terms of exchanging medical information? All right.
You can ask a different one.
Not exactly.
Ask one other question is, how many people know how much information Google has about you? Feel as if they really understand how much information Google has. Okay, and I think that's the issue. If you actually knew how much information Google had about you, it's probably 10 times more than anybody else knows about. And very few people actually, so they use it, they get comfortable, and I'm sure probably every he'll use Google every day. But the information they have on you is shocking. It's shocking.
Yep. No, let me ask you, Dr. QB is still a very expensive prototype at this point. What is Anybots doing on one hand to bring the cost down so that it is more approachable, and to expand the functionality?
Yeah, well, this is actually more than a prototype. It is a consumer product. It is available for sale.
To very rich consumers.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that is true. So we see two different levels. One would be more of an enterprise application. So it'd be a much larger type of robot with a larger form factor, a bigger screen to be able to depict the person on the other side much more accurately than the screen we have. And then the other model that we're going to be working on and introducing soon will be the QC, which will be more of a consumer-based. That one, we're able to really utilize today's technology to reduce the costs substantially and make it to where it could be affordable for everyone to have in their home.
Where do you see the price going?
Well, that's down, obviously.
Do we have time for some
Where
questions?
this is actually probably a better question. Where do you think the price point should be to where it'd be comfortable? Would it be more of a payment plan, or do you think that it's just a figure that we throw out there?
Or a rental model.
Rental.
A rental model or a lease.
yeah.
And then you can get an upgrade
Yep.
every so often to a newer model. I think that makes a lot of sense, just like a cell phone plan.
Well, when you're looking in the caregiving space, if it is something that you have, as you said, it doesn't climb stairs, but upstairs, downstairs, could it be replacing greater expenses in the
Sure,
long
yeah.
run? And so, excuse me.
Right.
That'll be interesting. So if we can take a couple questions in the meantime, people, if they feel like starting to grab some lunch, they can do that. But any questions from the audience? And I'm sorry, we're all over the place, but we don't have a microphone. Any questions? Everyone's like, no, we're just hungry. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, guys.